Are you worried? Why? Especially if you're a Christian. Why are you worried? It's easy to worry. It's easy to get negative. It's easy to have fear. But I'm telling you, for Christians, forget the orthodox, forget the rules. Why are we worried? Did Jesus rise from the dead or not? If he rose from the dead, that means death has been defeated and we have nothing to worry about. Because the promise of joy, in fact, there's a book by a guy named Alan Drury called The Promise of Joy, which changed my life. It had nothing to do with Christianity, but changed my life dramatically. I want to share with you this Lazarus Laughed play. The reason I want to share this with you because it is, as you worry and think about what if, oh my goodness, think about you're Lazarus, and we'll go into this a little bit, and just think about not only of your faith of Jesus coming back from the dead, but just that you had come back from the dead too. So I'm going to share with you, this is the book, the Lazarus Laughed book, as a play for the imaginative theater from Eugene O'Neill in 1927. And the minute I saw it as a play, I said, ugh. But that's my own bias. It's a play, but this is the issue when it comes to the philosophical writings of previous people, previous generations. You need to look back. Some of that stuff is tough to read, I grant you, but some of the stuff is just. I always talk about C.S. Lewis. It's just fundamentally, it stands the test of time. So let me just read you the one review on this is by this guy, Elizabeth Smales. This play answers Nietzsche's God is dead with a resounding death is dead from the mouth of Lazarus, who accepted Christ's invitation to rise again. I have this, but anyway, let's go read to this and you can read the whole thing right here, I think, yeah, at least a portion of it. This is Bill Johnson online, Lazarus Laughed. So I'm going to read you a little bit of this, because good boy, this should help you to, as worry creeps in, to think about the worry that you have. And look, I mean, I worry, all the time. I was listening to Andy Stanley, who's a preacher over here at North Point Community Church, and I don't go to his church. I mean, I'm Catholic. The problem with Catholicism is a lot of just going back to my man John Waters talks about the church and all those rules and regulations. We've driven a lot of people away. But the fundamental truth of Catholicism, the universal nature, not Catholicism, the C, the capital C, but the Catholic belief is universal. Jesus died, Jesus rose. And that is, I don't want to say non-denominational because it sounds like it's pitting one sect of Christianity against another. It's not. It's just the understanding that Christ died for all. And regardless of how you throw in with Catholics or Protestants or Methodists, I get Protestants as Methodist, I get all that, but it doesn't matter. Anyway, so Lazarus laughed. In a sermon years ago, the great Southern preacher John Claypool, I wonder if that's Les Claypool's dad. You know who Les Claypool is? So say yes in the comments if you know who Les Claypool is, and say no in the comments if you don't. Believe it or not, a simple comment of yes or no helps me immensely. So say yes if you know who Les Claypool is, and say no if you don't, and that helps me immensely, believe it or not. Anyway, so John Claypool talked about a little-known play by Eugene O'Neill entitled Lazarus Laughed. Lazarus Laughed. In this play, O'Neill gives us a glimpse of the power of life without fear. The play begins where the biblical story of Lazarus leaves off, presuming that the audience is very familiar with the biblical story. Lazarus was dead and buried for 4 whole days when Jesus came to the village of Bethany, had the stone rolled back from the tomb, and gave Lazarus back the gift of life. And there you go. As the curtain goes up, Lazarus is seen stumbling out of the dark, blinking to the sunlight. Whoa, whoa, whoa. After the grave clothes are taken off of him, Lazarus begins to laugh, a gentle, soft laugh. Nothing better, nothing derisive, an embracing, astonishing, welcoming sound. Just picture that, Lazarus. Where am I? It's just like, the very first thing Lazarus does is embrace Jesus with gratitude. Then Lazarus begins to embrace his sisters, Martha and Mary, and think about how revolutionary the good book is to bring women into it, when women back then were second-class citizens, and yet women were so integral to Jesus's teaching and preaching. Man, the first feminist. I just sit there in awe about how the wonders and awe of our forefathers who have written this stuff down. And I'm not going to sit in there and say, look, you can argue all day long. Is the biblical strict? Is the biblical, could they have been misinterpreted in the various changes of languaging? Look, I'm not going to argue that. But the idea that our own faith has women as such prominent roles, it's freaking awesome. It's awesome. It's awesome. Anyway, so Martha and Mary as were embraced by Lazarus, and then the other people who are gathered about in astonishment. Lazarus has a very clear look in his eye, nothing far away. It's as if he's seeing the world about him for the very first time. He reaches over and pats the earth very affectionately. He looks up at the sky, at the trees, at the neighbors, as if he had never seen them before, and as if he's overwhelmed by the incredible of all rightness of the way everything is. The very first words Lazarus utters are the words, yes, 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 as if to embrace reality being discovered all over again. In the play, Lazarus makes his way back to his house, and the whole village of Bethany is awash with wonder. Finally, someone gets the courage to ask what was on everybody's mind. Lazarus, can you tell what it's like to die? What lies on the other side of this boundary that none of us have ever crossed? At that point, Lazarus begins to laugh even more intensely and says, there is no death. Really, there is only life. There is only God. There is only incredible joy. Death is not the way it appears from this side. Death is not an abyss into which we go into chaos. Death is a portal through which we move into everlasting growth and everlasting life. It's funny, just talk about John Waters. He talks about, it's funny. He talks about the appeal of walking on clouds, being nice to everybody has no appeal forever, has no appeal to me, as if the old, the Catholicism and the Irish Catholics or just the old school religious of Christianity. Yeah, you'd be walking on clouds saying, hey, everybody, what's up? And John says, what if someone's a dick? Can I tell him to F off? I thought that was funny. And that's the amazing thing about the eternal. We can't comprehend. We cannot comprehend what awaits for us. And to try to do so is to make yourself go insane. You just can't. We're not walking. I mean, who knows? I don't know. Maybe we are walking around on clouds saying, hey, what's up? What's up? I don't know. But man, death is a portal through which we move into everlasting growth and everlasting life, says Lazarus. Then Lazarus says, the one that meets us there is the same generosity that gave us our lives in the beginning, the one who gave us our birth. Not because we deserved it, but because that generous one wanted us to be, and therefore there is nothing to fear in the next realm. The grave is as empty as a doorway is empty. It is a portal through which we move into greater and finer life. Therefore, there is nothing to fear. Our great agenda in this part of life is to learn to accept and to learn to trust. We are here to learn to love more fully. There is only life. There is no death. And with that, Lazarus' laughter began to fill the whole house in which he was staying. I can imagine. Then Lazarus goes back to his daily task, but there is something different. He is calm and not anxious anymore. He is no longer vulnerable to the fear that diminishes the vitality of life. The house where he lives became known as the house of laughter, and night after night you would hear singing and dancing. And the spirit of this one who had come back with this message that there is nothing to fear began to spread throughout the whole little village. The quality of work began to rise all over Bethany. People began to live in harmony and more generously with one another. The conflicts of old died down. Joy settled over this whole little community because someone had come back saying, there is nothing to fear. There is nothing to fear. But not everyone in Bethany was pleased with the turn of events. The Roman authorities were quick to sense that this one who had lost his fear of death was in fact a great threat to the kind of control they had and would like to maintain. You realize, of course, that the key to intimidation is always the incipient fear of death. The way a tyrant holds someone down is by always suggesting that if they don't obey, then something is terrible like death will happen. One of the cruelest of all the Roman emperors, a man named Caligula, used to say, crosses and corpses are so educational. Let the scum see their blood or the blood of some of their kin, and it will soon cower them in fear so we can rule them. Hold on, I want to show you this book. Remember what Caligula said, crosses and corpses, cross? Are so educational. Let the scum see their blood or the blood of some of their kin, and it will so cower them in fear that we can rule them. So let me show you this book right here. It's called Crucifixion by Martin Hengel. I'll put a link in the show notes. I tell you, I think we overlook, and I know I have. Let me just show you something. How insane it was for the Messiah, the Savior of all the world, to be crucified. Crucifixion was not just the pain that Jesus felt, but not just a torment, but being crucified was for scoundrels who really said, look, you are so unworthy of this world, we're going to crucify you. Does that make sense? The eternal deplatforming. So let me just read you this. A crucified Messiah, Son of God or God, must have seemed at contradictions in terms to everyone, Jew, Greek, Roman, or barbarian, asked to believe such a claim, and will certainly have been thought offensive and foolish. Oh, man. To say pleasure is gentle on the ears, but to say cross is harsh. The harshness of the latter word matches the pain brought on by the cross. So say the being on the cross. It was just the complete violation of humanity. It says you are so unworthy of a human being, we're going to crucify you. From the time of Plautus, that is, from the 3rd century BC onwards, there's evidence of the use of crux as a vulgar taunt among the lower classes. It can be found on the lips of slaves and prostitutes and is comparable with, I can't read these words, an English equivalent might be of the gallows bird or hand dog. Oh, man. And then here's Lucian. The letter T was given its evil significance by the evil instrument, T, shaped like a cross, shaped in the form of a tau, which tyrants erected to hang men on. I think we can only punish Tau by making a T of him. Celsus combines in a contemptuous way the nailing of Jesus to the cross with his lowly trade as a carpenter and mocks Christian talk of the tree of life and the resurrection of the flesh through the wood of the cross. What drunken old woman telling stories to lull a small child to sleep would not be ashamed of muttering such preposterous things? That's from Menicius Felix. I don't know who that is, but I'm not sure real Pablo name. The question why God did not devise an honorable kind of death for Jesus. Why by an infamous kind of punishment which may appear unworthy even of a man if he is free, although guilty. Why did God allow Jesus to die on the cross? And it's an unworthy for even a man, never mind one who claims to be the Savior. And of course they talk, and this is the funny thing, for Jesus of Galilee. Well, Galilean was a derogatory term used of zealots and Christians in the time of Julian. What was that noise? Pablo, you okay? All right, so let's go back to this. So the Romans were taskmasters at intimidation. Where's that guy? Oh boy, what's he up to? The Romans were taskmasters at intimidation, and Lazarus represented a real threat. How do you intimidate someone who's no longer afraid of death? In the play, the Roman authorities move in on Lazarus. They tell him to quit laughing. They tell him his house can no longer be the place for parties, and all he does is to laugh anymore. And he says clearly, the truth is, there's nothing you can do to me. There is no death. There's only life. The Romans were so frustrated that they arrested him. They take him to Caesarea, where he appears before a higher official. But he's not able to do anything with Lazarus. And so Lazarus is taken all the way to Rome. The play ends as Lazarus stands face to face with the Roman emperor. Here is a man who is allegedly the most powerful of all on earth, and he says to Lazarus, you have a choice. You will either stop this infernal laughter right this minute, or I'm going to have to put you to death. And then Lazarus continues to laugh. He says to the emperor, go ahead and do what you will. There is no death. There is only life. The play ends with a man who's no longer afraid of death, actually more powerful than the one who ruled all of the Roman Empire. Man, that just brings a tear to my eye, man. And here I am, the biggest hypocrite ever. You know what I'm saying? Saying, don't worry. And the biggest hypocrite, the biggest, you know, it's nuts. And I sit there and God, please, please just forgive all I have done, all I will do, my pride, my trepidation, my fear, my anger, hostility towards those you have sent your son to die for. If you truly, truly believe, you have to be like Lazarus. And here I am. I'm telling you, I don't want to. Just like Paul. Paul says, "Look, I'm the biggest sinner out there." And Paul. He was literally blinded by the light. That's Paul. Saul on the road to Damascus was blinded by the light, and yet he still sinned. He still doubted. But yet Paul and Peter, all these guys, they were like Lazarus. They said, at the end of the day, this is going to be painful, but I know Jesus came back from the dead. And because I know death is thus dead, it's been beaten, it's been conquered. Why be scared? Why worry? All right, we'll see you.